point, David is going to take over. So the topics that I have in mind for this morning, by popular request, Vogan duality, deformation, example SL2R, the Jens infiltration, and coherent continuation. And that will probably take up all morning, and then we'll see what people want to hear about in the afternoon. But before I start, I wanted to do one other thing. This is partly to show off the power of the software and the programming language. It's really gotten to the point where you can do lots of things remarkably quickly. I'm not doing this to show off my programming skills. I would never do that in a room with Mark Van Leeuwen present, just like I would never show off my math skills in a room with David. So, but just to show what the software can do, so I was talking about W cells. So suppose you have a block and you write it as a disjoint union of cells, and each cell goes to a representation on that cell. And I said that you can compute the matrix, the action of a simple reflection on that. You can compute W on CI, and then you can compute the character of the representation on CI. And finally, you can compute the inner products of all of these representations, the characters of beta. And this is all, well, it's all implemented very crudely now, and it is only going to be reasonable for rather small vial groups. But if we deem this to be worthwhile, then Mark might implement the vial group in the way that it's implemented in the library, originally by Faco de Clue, which is far more efficient, and probably the things that I'm showing here you'd be able to do for somewhat larger groups. So let me illustrate it with an example. So let's set G is equal to SP for R. And again, I'm going out on a limb here. I just wrote this morning, so if it crashes or gives me fake information, I'm not going to be too disturbed. Yes?
What is the last thing you wrote?
This thing?
Yeah.
So each cell has a representation, and you can take the trace. So you make a matrix of the trace of the CI rep inner product with the trace of the CJ rep.
You mean each representation in a cell or the example?
No, the whole cell. Yeah, so I don't have a convenient way to get individual representations in the cell. Cell could be reducible, but so it's the inner product of these possibly reducible representations. So for example, when the diagonal terms will be the sums of the squares of the dimensions of the irreducible components of that cell. So if a diagonal term is 1, it tells you the cell is irreducible.
Okay, so your pi over sigma, that just was just show us a representation.
Yes. Okay?
Yeah, thanks.
And one of the things I'm curious about is how close does this information come to completely describing the representation on the block? I don't know. This is so let's look at an example. So let's take GD to be the dual quasi-split form of G. And let's set B to be the block of GGD. This is our famous block of size 12 that we've seen a bunch of times. Let cells be the W cells of this block. And I think this is how it works. Cell character of cells bracket 0, G. Well, so the conjugacy classes, G has 5 conjugacy classes, and I could write them. They're explicitly given in a list. I can list them for you if you want. But anyway, there's the time.
You're not saying the SP4R is about.
Excuse me, the SP4F2 might. Sorry. The number of conjugacy classes of W is 5, and you list them as represented as G1 through G, or W1 through W5, and W1 is the identity, and W5 is the long element of the vial group. And actually, while I'm at it, why don't I just say, so there's 1, S alpha, S beta, and David will look at the output and tell us which one's short and which one's long. Probably this is short, and this is long. And then there's S alpha, well, I'm not sure what order they're in. 1, 2, 3, well, there's one more, so I guess that's S alpha and beta. And then there's the long element of the vial group. I'm pretty sure that's the conjugacy classes in W. What's the matter, David?
I was just doing the things that you did, and when I did number of conjugacy classes in G, I got 5 lines of comments about simply connected group datum before it said 5.
Really? Oh, yeah, that's the actual list.
So, but why I typed exactly.
Oh, because when I type number sign, there's a number sign at the beginning of my line.
Yeah, here is one.
Oh, really?
You have some previous commands in there?
Oh, maybe.
So you may have a more, a slightly different version of the.
Oh, I definitely have a slightly different version, yes, for it. So it's a little bit inconvenient to read, but identity, first reflection, second reflection, product of 2 reflections, long element of the vial group. Yes?
Can I take you back to the beginning?
Sure.
You choose an inner class in G and an inner class in the dual G.
Yes.
And what do you do with these numbers? What is this inner product of?
Whoa.
It's not the block of relating standard and unit school.
Yes, it is. So so I'm going to actually talk about this in a few minutes. I mentioned before the different ways of constructing blocks. But so we have G and we have SP4R, and we have the block of the trivial, and this has 12 elements in it, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. But I constructed it by this GGD construction, which I'll talk about a little later. But it is exactly this. All right, so.
What do you do from the values that you got, the numbers?
I'm sorry, what?
So at the end you got some numbers, I think. What was it, like 1, 1, 1?
Here or here?
Yes.
Yeah, so let me explain what that means. So if you do, long ago I learned board technique, which is you do the middle board first. And I keep forgetting. So if you do cell underscore character of cell, G, or root down, RD, this computes, so this is a cell, which is a representation of the vowel group of this root datum.
Is that something where the question?
Yes, this morning, in fact.
But it's,
Well, some of it's,
it's not up yet.
no. The most recent stuff isn't. Some of it is, but the most recent stuff is not. And, what was I saying? Yeah, so you have a representation of the cell, and you specify the root datum, and then what this returns is, for example, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and that means that the trace of this representation on conjugacy class number I. I mean, that's what this is. And I runs from 1 to, in this case, 5. So there are 5 conjugacy classes, so to specify the character of representation, you have to tell me the trace on each of the conjugacy classes, and in this case, they're all 1, that is to say, this is the trivial representation.
These are places of representation.
This is right, this is these, exactly,
Divided.
of the vowel group, yes.
So you're using this always integer for the vowel group?
Using what?
These traces are?
Yes, these traces are all integers. That's a fact about vowel groups. They're all defined over Z. This is not true for a general finite group, but it is true for vowel groups. Let me work with the root datum just because it might be slightly less confusing. So let's look at the cell character of cells bracket 1. That's also trivial. Cell bracket 2 is this one, 3, minus 1, 1, minus 1, minus 1. 3, minus 1, 1, minus 1, minus 1. Is that what I said? Okay, so this is the trace on the identity. This is a 3-dimensional representation. The cell is parameters 2, 5, and 7, I think. And anyway, the cardinality of the cell is 3, which you can read off from here. And besides that, it's a little bit hard to tell just looking at that what the representation is. So that's where cells table comes in. And I forget what the format is. Cells table, cells table, cells RD. Should I make that bigger?
Little, yeah.
Let's see what I want to say. Oh yeah, so cell.
Well, these are the inner products you were talking
These are the inner products, right? So here are these characters. There are five cells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 cells. 6 cells? 6 cells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the first one's trivial, and the second one's trivial, and then there are 3 cells of size 3, and then a cell at the end of size 1. And these are the characters of those 6 representations. And this is the matrix of the inner products of those cell representations. So reading down the diagonal, it tells you that the first 2 cells are irreducible, the second 2 cells have 2 distinct irreducibles in them, and the last cell is irreducible, because that's the sum of the squares. And it tells you that these 2 cells are identical, and it's obvious that they're both trivial. And the fact that this is block triangular says that this cell, these 3 cells are Are they identical?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so these three cells are the same, and they each contain two representations, and so therefore they must have a two-dimensional and a one-dimensional in it, and the one-dimensional is not the trivial, and the one-dimensional is not this one.
Which
So,
is the sign.
pardon me?
That last one is maybe we're saying it's the sign representation.
I assume the last one's the, yeah, the last one's the sign because the two simple reflections are acting by -1. So this group, since it has two root lengths, has 4 one-dimensional representations. And I think that's kind of neat.
So there's one missing.
Yeah, there's one representation which doesn't show up.
Shows up for SP11.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I don't understand that inner class mismatch.
Well, it's just because G is SP4 and it has a quasi-split dual form. And then I said G is equal to SP11. It has a quasi-split dual form, but it doesn't know that those first two G's were inner to each other. So it has no way of identifying their dual guys.
Even though they were,
Where does GD come from?
Yeah, that's
What do you mean?
Well, you talked about GD, but I don't know.
I said it right there. Dual quasi-split form of G.
Yeah.
the first time,
I overwrote it.
that's the reason the first one didn't work. GD was.
Oh, right.
Quasi-split.
The first time I defined it to be dual to SP4R.
Yeah.
So when you're using this block command entering two forms, it's not enough that you cleverly enter the correct second group. You have, Atlas has to,
Currently, every time you do something like SP11, you're constructing a fresh inner class with the real form.
okay.
It doesn't know that this is the same inner class that
Yeah.
had before, and that's why it refuses to real forms. It could actually, with a lot of work, realize that it's correct. It doesn't do it.
So can you ask for, I mean, I don't want you to stop and do this, but you could ask for all the inner forms of GD and so get access to something that,
Yeah, if you have all inner forms of GD, or check all.
Yeah, I think, so you can define, I checked here, you can define the dual quasi-split form of the inner class. And so if I defined all these groups as real forms in that given inner class, that would work.
But actually, if you have not said G is SP11, but G is real form number 1 of the old G,
That would have done it also.
that would
Yes.
have done it. Then I recognize that it's the same inner class.
so. Just a related question. Maybe you can get back to it after the SP11 example. How do you? Can you just show everyone how you get a block that doesn't contain the trivial for SP44?
Sure.
How you would specify.
Sure. I'll come back to that in a second. Since I'm almost there, let me just do this. Cell table. Cells table. What kind of terminology is that? Cells table of, I'm drawing a blank, cells, RD. Okay, so here there are two cells, and these are their characters, and that's the sign representation. And this is a three-dimensional representation with two guys in it, and you're asserting that this cell has the other one-dimensional in it.
which you can tell because that character is not the same as the one that you computed a minute ago.
Right. Well, and it's also not the one that has the trivial in it. You should really take the inner product to check, but yeah. Okay, so,
Is it maybe the case that this two-dimensional representation cannot be defined with integer matrices? So you will never...
no, they're all,
Two-dimensional is the reflection representation.
all of the irreducibles are defined over Z.
It can always be defined, so it's not just the traces, they are completely defined.
Correct. So, what did I want to say? Let's just look at a slightly bigger example. So here are the characters of the cells in SP, the big block for SP6. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 conjugacy classes, and there are cells of these various sizes. And it takes a little while to compute the table, so I pre-computed it, just a minute, but there's the table of inner products. So it's not quite block diagonal. You notice that here, well, well, it's block diagonal if you
reordered the...
would it be block more, you're saying if you switch these two rows or something?
That's correct.
Uh-huh. And is the block diagonal nature of this must be telling us something, right, David?
Absolutely. It's so two cells can overlap. In other words, you can have a non-zero inner product if and only if they have the same special representation in them. So if you put together, in your table, if you put together all the cells with the same special, then all of those pairs will overlap. They'll all have the special in common. In this case, the cells that are not irreducible by magic are all isomorphic. That's not going to be true in general. I'm not sure how far you have to go to find an example where it isn't true. Well, actually, SP4C. You could probably do SP4C.
I could, but it's SP4R took a minute or two, so SP4C is going to...
No, this was SP6.
Oh, you're right, this is SP6. Well, let's see. I know what's going to happen.
It's going to crash.
It's going to crash. I just know it.
What is how?
Yeah, the question is how.
So you could ask people while the computation is going on what the vial group is here, and what its representation is.
Sure. So I'm doing the block of the trivial representation of SP4C. So G of R is SP4C. So G of C is SP4C cross SP4C. And the block is in one-to-one correspondence with the vial group.
And actually, I was wrong. I was thinking of left cells. These cells
Yeah.
Will also,
Yeah, there's, well, there's one cell of size 6 and 2 cells of size 1.
All right, so characters. They're the characters of the cells of dimensions 1, 6, and 1. And okay, so let's put that aside. I think that's really quite nice. And as I said, part of what I wanted to illustrate is that once you've gotten you sort of warmed up with the programming language, it's really efficient. I mean, I wrote this in half an hour this morning. So
Actually, one thing that would be probably
Yeah.
interesting to do at some point is do left cells in the complex case. That wouldn't require any, I mean, I can't imagine that it would be hard to.
certainly.
I told Susanna last night that writing such a script would be useful.
That's an interesting suggestion. Okay, so Peter had asked about how you find blocks of, interesting blocks of representations besides the block of the trivial. And let me say, let me say one word about that and then
Can you reduce the volume a bit?
reduce it. How's that?
That's better.
So this gets into what I was going to talk about in a minute, which is duality. But before I get to that, let me just do it on the parameter side. So how do you find, so suppose you have G, a real group. How do you find the blocks? And let's say at infinitesimal character rho. Well, let's just do an example. Let's set G equal to SP6R. And let's do the block of the trivial of G. So this has 53 representations in the block of the trivial representation. So when you're doing examples, you should always do the trivial representation first. That's the biggest block, it's the most interesting. There's lots of stuff there. But how do you find other blocks? Well, one thing you can do is give the block sizes command. And this gives you a matrix, and I'll explain this a little bit later. The rows of this matrix are parameterized by real forms of G. And so in this case, I'll put it over here, 0, 0, 0, 1, 9, 53, 27, 7, 1, 0, 0, 0. So the rows here are SP, what's the group? 6? SP 3, 0, SP 2, 1, SP 6, R. And the dual group is type B3, which is various flavors of SO7. So there's SO70, SO61, SO52, and SO43. The columns are parameterized by real forms of the dual group. And as I mentioned, blocks are given by choosing a pair, a real form of G and a real form of the dual group. When you, for any such pair, the block could be empty. That's the zeros. And the big block, the principal block, this is the block of the trivial of G, is always given by taking the quasi-split form on the dual side. And this row here is telling you that this group has other blocks of size 1, 7, 27, in addition to 53. Yes?
So this means that for a given real form,
Yes?
there are infinitely many types of blocks.
Yes.
So it seems now.
Well, this is at a fixed infinitesimal character. And there's only finitely many representations at fixed infinitesimal characters. So,
But if
huh?
This is for regular integrals.
Regular integral, yeah.
But not all the representations of the row
Yes?
have the same infinitesimal character.
Not, in general, they don't. In this particular case, they do, since G is simply connected.
so if you take other regular integral,
So all regular integral infinitesimal characters, the blocks are isomorphic by the translation principle. Actually, David's going to talk about this a little bit later. So whether you do, it doesn't matter, they're all the same.
and these are the interesting ones, right?
I'd say all blocks are interesting, but I mean, of course, yes, these are, the blocks at regular integral infinitesimal character are the biggest and richest and most interesting.
So let me ask it in the following way.
Yes.
If I do the corresponding calculations, figure out the Jack list of polynomials for this block,
Yes.
that's enough for understanding everything that they need.
No, the Kaiser listed polynomials in this block are different. If you're interested in writing formulas for composition series, if you take a standard module in this block and you want to compute its irreducible components, you need to calculate the Kaiser-listed polynomials, which are defined for this block. Okay. All right. So let's do. So this is the dual picture. Let's go back over here. How many representations does SP6R have in infinitesimal character row? $88. 53, 88. So there are 88 representations at row, and I've got 53 of them in this block. So, for example, I can say sharp block of all bracket 0. So what does this do? So I have a list now, all is 0, 1, 2, up to 87. A list of all of the representations at infinitesimal character row. And 53 of them are grouped together into this block, but I don't know which 53. So in particular, representation number 0, I don't know which block that's in. So let's check.